thought I was gonna have to fight a ghost in my own house. He pushed first, so I pushed back. Cause I'll be damned if you gon' run up into my home without my permission. Ghost or no ghost, you got me mistaken.
It's the Rhetorical Sake series Straight Shook, episode 4. Today, I'm going to continue talking about my supernatural paranormal experiences in Italy. I'm also going to delve into some I've experienced in California. Man, the supernatural, the ghosts, whatever, these entities, they can get pretty violent. So today we're going to delve into my experience with that and how I withstood the test of my time. Welcome to the show, Straight Shook.
Get your squad game up. Know who's surrounding you. If they're not building you up, if they're tearing you down, might be time to let them go.
Tonight marks the ascension, the rising of the hunter's moon. And that's the first full moon since the harvest moon. I thought that was pretty becoming considering my last name is Hunter. I think that each one of my names is spiritually significant, and I think that for each and every one of us. And y'all know I'm a little woo-woo, so I do sometimes dabble in the astrology side of things, but I wanted to look into the spiritual significance of the hunter's moon. And what I found out is that the position of a full moon is always totally opposite the sun. So there's a concept of duality that is existing right before our eyes in the heavens, which is awesome. Now, oddly enough, this hunter's moon is going to be in the Aries position. And Aries, if you're into astrology and that's your sign or that's your moon, like mine, which is pretty weird because my last name is Hunter and this moon is an Aries moon. And because of my birth date and my astrological sign and the date and time I was born, my moon is actually Aries. So we got leadership, on hot-headedness, on narcissism, on egotistical, asshole on asshole. You know what I'm saying? In any case, so sitting opposite of justice-seeking Libra. This is from Elite Daily. The essence of hot-headed Aries revolves around one's authenticity and sense of self. Remember, Aries is the first sign of the zodiac, and with good reason. Its leadership qualities are inevitably admirable, but its innate fearlessness stems from its ruling planet, Mars. Go-getter Aries goes to war, and full moons bring things to light. So this was saying that it's a time of lunation that has to do with taking charge and taking presence within yourself, establishing yourself, and not resisting change, all in the same. I'm all about that life. And I've noticed with the podcast, Thursdays and Fridays, I want to get the most listens. So I didn't want to leave y'all hanging before I step out here and go to my part-time job. And I love doing this. And I told y'all we're going to have episode after episode leading up to Halloween. And things are getting a little spooky-ooky out here. I don't know about you, but I've experienced some weird full moon activity. When I was riding the metro in Los Angeles, my usual route, the 720 bus goes down Venice. That's your fast track, the red line. Don't mess with me. So this dude gets on the bus, and I happen to sit in the middle of it. And it's one of those long, extended buses with like the accordion seating in the middle because it's like a double-length metro bus. In any case, I'm sitting like towards the back or whatever. This dude gets on the front, and he is clearly, he's not tweaking. He's not on meth, but he's enraged, and there's a spirit about him. You could tell he's almost possessed, and he's picking a fight with any and everyone. And I'm sitting next to another black gentleman. He's darker than me, skinnier than me, but good-looking guy, and nice. You know, we don't talk too much. You're not going to talk to every stranger you see in Los Angeles or whatever, but you kind of feel out where you want to sit. Is this person going to, rip out a knife and stab me or something or follow me home? I don't know. But this dude that gets on the bus, a young Latino gentleman, jumps in his face And he's like, fuck you, fuck you. So the bus driver stops at the next stop. He doesn't move, and he opens up the back door, which is like right in front of me. And this guy's like pacing around the bus, and he's clearly like possessed. And it was a full moon that night, and the bus driver goes toe to toe with him, and he's like, you're a fucking nigger. You're a fucking nigger. Fuck you. I'll kill you, and all this stuff. He jumps in my face, and he's like, you want some? And I just look at the little girl in the back, and he looks at the little girl, and she is shook. She's sitting next to her mother, and she is straight shook. So I think that landed on him because it was nothing that I had to say. As much as I want to tell this story and be like, I told him, look at that little girl. Look at what you're doing to her. You are scaring her. What is your problem? You know, I didn't do that. I just looked at her. It caught his attention, and I think the spirit moved in, and the guy got off the bus. It was unfortunate to see someone going through it, and the gentleman next to me, he said, it is a full moon tonight. And I was like, yeah, it is, man. Yeah, some weird stuff's going to go down. And so that was firsthand account of witnessing the power of the full moon cycle. I didn't really believe in all that woo-woo, but I do think the stars and the heavens and astronomy has been a big part of carrying the human story and giving us hope, even before Christianity, before Buddhism, before Islam. There were the stars, and that's what we had to look up to. And so we know a lot of our folklore and what's been passed down throughout humanity is based on the sequence of stars moving throughout the sky, because that was the only sense of traction that we had of existence beyond where we were at. In any case, I'm grateful that people opened up their minds to the concept of powers that be, even though we can't necessarily see them or intimately identify them. And that's where faith is required for a higher power. And I've needed that faith, and it's been established because, look, that dude sitting next to me on the bus, we were chatting it up, and I was like, what's your name, man? He said my first name. Me and him have the same first name. And I just don't find that happenstance. But I wonder, I was thinking about this last night, if this guy might have been an angel. And I say that because when I was in New York City, I was a bike messenger. But a lot of my friends just had like regular jobs or whatever. But there was a concert in the park, in Central Park, in the summer. And I never really went through that part of Central Park because it was the most touristy, probably the most crowded. It wasn't really efficient as a bike messenger, as a courier. But that evening, just the masses were getting off the subway, coming off the streets, and just drones of people going into droves into Central Park. And this guy looked like he was from Wall Street, maybe Italian, my age. So I was like 24 at the time. And he's like, hey, are you going to this concert? I don't know exactly where it's at. Can I walk with you? And obviously, I'm in a big city. I'm in New York City. I'm going to be auspicious. I'm going to be suspicious about this guy because he might be trying to steal my wallet if he distracts me. I'm not dumb. Like, I caught this little kid trying to steal my wallet, pickpocket me when I was in Barcelona. Don't play with me. In any case, I, know how to keep my distance or whatever, watch his hands, but he clearly had just gotten off work and was just trying to get some sense of life about himself after working probably a 60-hour week on Wall Street. So we were walking, talking, and he was telling me about working on Wall Street and how exhausting it is, and just pretty much, you sell your soul to the machine. And I was telling him, well, I'm a bike messenger, I'm a courier, wish I was making more money. And we found this balance of what's it worth, your quality of life. Is the money outweigh the lack of time, or does the lack of time outweigh the money type thing? And, it just opened up my eyes to the duality of things. And I think that's where this episode is going, because I've seen this paranormal, supernatural shift enter into our realm and become physical to where I've had to interact with it and stand my ground. Now, I mentioned guardian angels, like the guy who had the same name as me on the bus. When me and this Wall Street kid split ways in Central Park, when we finally made it to the venue, I asked him what his name was. We actually exchanged numbers because he too returned my name. He had the same first name. I never saw that guy again. I think I texted him once, and I think he might have texted me back a little while later, but I was just wondering, why do I keep encountering people with the same name as me in situations that, one, I'm remembering, that are memorable, And two, I kind of need some help, or I might have needed some clarity. I just don't count that as happenstance. So take it for what it is. But maybe these guardian angels are opening up my eyes repetitiously. Repetition is the father of learning by reiterating my name. Who knows? In any case, back to Italy. So, as far as interacting with the supernatural and the paranormal, ghosts, so to speak,
Hey guys, I wanted to take a moment and remind you to check out my book, God Sent Dog, the story of how one dog led a man, me, to sobriety. It's available on Amazon and Kindle, along with, when people purchase God Sent Dog, they often purchase my other book, Chasing God Alcoholically. Now, both of these are available for free on Kindle Unlimited, and I'd really appreciate it if you check them out, even if for a few pages. What I've noticed is that these are page turners. When people start reading them, they read them in full. So I'm really grateful for that. Chasing God Alcoholically. Email me at earth, that's earth without the A, at ERTH at erhunter.live. Live. And I could really use your support. To all my listeners in Switzerland, Australia, the United States, India, the United Kingdom, Netherlands, Ireland, I love you all. And I'd really appreciate it if you all could show me some love, because I want to keep producing this show, and I'm going to keep striking until it hits. I'm going to keep digging until we get some water or oil. In any case, don't worry about it if you can't right now, but let me tell you something. It's a seed, and I am definitely worth your investment. As are you. Take care of yourself first, but let's take care of business up in here. Y'all know what I'm saying? Keeping it straight shook. Let's get back to the episode. We're going to dive in, but check out www.patreon.com/erhunter and follow me on Amazon as an author, and every little bit helps. So God bless you, and let's jump back into this thing. Woo woo!
back in Italy, it was in the spring semester, and it was probably before the spring break, which would have been around Easter time. I was attempting to take a nap in my room, and my room was weird because I was on the top bunk and the door was out of my line of sight. But I would hear it open and close, and my roommate would come and go. And as I previously mentioned in another episode, it would often sound like he would enter the room and sit on his bed, and then I'd get off my top bunk and find no one else was in the room, which was very strange. It was the middle of the day, and throughout the fall semester and the spring semester, since I was staying there for the year and some change, I was the director of the Big Sister, Big Brother, Big Sister program. So these Italian parents would bring their Italian children, and us Americans would only speak English to them. And we would have to interpret their Italian and their English, but it was to give them exposure to the American English dialect and to help us offer some service to the community. So throughout the whole year, we were preparing to put on the show The Little Mermaid. And rather than work with just one kid in particular, I was the director of the whole show. So I was directing my peers that I was living with, and I was directing these little kids, and we would practice and rehearse every time they visited. I think it was like every other Thursday. So it's the middle of the day, probably like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'm probably wiped from a night out drinking and having class and working and things like that. So I go to my room to take a nap, and me and my roommate, we kind of switch positions, whereas he's leaving our little small room and I'm going in to take a nap. And so he was such a great roommate, because my irresponsible ass, my lazy behind, he'd wake me up for class. He'd be like, yo, you're going to be late again. Like, you can't be late. You're going to get dropped. You know what I'm saying? He was a good guy. He is a good guy. In any case, so I start taking a nap, and I'm just like barely asleep when I just feel like someone's in my room. So I look down, and a kid that I'd never seen before, I guess had showed up early for rehearsals that night. But he was black, and a black kid darker than me. I'm like multiracial, biracial, whatever. But he was like clearly African, Italian, or American, or whatever. And probably like 7 or 8 years old, maybe 8 or 9. And I was like, hey, you're not supposed to be up here where the students live. You need to go back downstairs to the lobby. And I just kind of roll back over because he doesn't move. He kind of just stares at me with a little grin. and I try to go back to sleep, but I feel him crawl up the bunk bed and onto my feet. And I feel him crawling, on top of my sheets. And I open up my eyes, and it's like this little monster child is with this wide grin with these sharp teeth and these black eyes, is like the Black-Eyed Kids, like that type of experience. I guess I never put that together. This might have been a Black-Eyed Kids event. And I got freaked out, and I jumped down off my bed, and I look behind me, and he's not there, and I look in front of me, and he's there. So I start walking around the villa, and I'm asking my friends, I'm like, hey, do you see this little kid that's right behind me? Like, do you see this kid following me around? Do you know who this is? And everyone's either kind of ignoring me, or they're like, nah, I don't know what you're talking about, and just doing their own thing, as we usually do. Like, Eric's just doing his crazy stuff. So I go down to the lobby where the parents would come in, which is like the back of the facilities for us, the back of this hotel. But the main administrative offices where guests or outsiders, we have like a music room, things like that, would enter. So it's bustling, and now it's nighttime. And these parents and these kids are running around, but no one's like really familiar. But I see a black man. He's like overweight, middle-aged, probably 40 or 50 years old. And I asked him, I was like, hey, did you lose your son? Because I think he came up in my room, and he's standing next to like an 8 or 9-year-old Caucasian boy. And he's like, oh, yeah, that's my other son. Yeah, he died a while back. And people come up to us all the time and ask me, because I guess he's still around. And the little boy next to him, he looked up to me and he said, I see him too. And so then a white woman, clearly this man's wife, comes up, and they have started their lives together, and I guess they both had kids of their own, and he had lost his. But it was weird. She didn't really acknowledge me too much, but she did acknowledge the little black boy that was not physically seen. So next thing I know, I'm back in my room. And around the corner, down the hallway, in another guy's room, a room I would later move into because it was bigger and had a beautiful balcony over the courtyard, these clothes are getting like thrown out of one of these closets. Like the hangers are just flying out and the clothes are just spewing out. So there's clearly some invisible entity just wreaking havoc in this room. And my younger brother, he's my cousin, but he's my younger brother. We grew up together. We're like a year apart. He's there. And now I know I'm dreaming, but everything just seems so real because I barely shut my eyes when I laid down on my bunk bed the first time that day. So he goes in after it to see what's going on, and something invisible is attacking him. And I intervene because the way I was raised, since I'm older, whenever I got into a fist fight as a kid, it was always over him because I had to finish what he started. And if I didn't, that's just how we were raised. You stand up for your family. You got their back, they got yours. There's no questions asked. And it was funny because in high school, people didn't know we were related for a while because he was like, he's black, we're light-skinned people, but good-looking guy. But, he acted like a brother, like he embraced his heritage or whatever. He acted like how we were raised. But me, I was raised all preppy, private school. Like he was like public school jock. I'm like overachieving bookworm with a learning disability and self-esteem issues. So, I got his back to this day because in high school, he had my back. I had his back as a kid, and then in high school, if I ever had a problem, and he was on the football team, so the football boys, they were like, yo, you one of us, we got you or whatever. I wasn't even on the football team, and I would condition with them in the summer. I'd be in the weight room with them because my best friend was a quarterback. So, I don't cut myself off because of my religious beliefs or my sexuality or things like that. Like, I like being a guy. And so sometimes as a man, things get a little physical. You got to know how to defend yourself. But something invisible and spiritual, I kind of took a deep breath. And I was like, all right, let's do this because I'm not just going to let him go out like that. And so I pretty much kind of offered myself to this thing. And I was like, take me. And I started wrestling with it. And it started to come up in me, like through my roots of me, the core of me, and swelling inside of me, and was taking over me. And I could feel like, and I see like a woman in a red dress, an Italian woman, and she's angry. And my soul is just crying out for help. And I can't, it's like sleep paralysis, but I'm in the dream and I can't get the words help out. And I just kind of it's like she's almost got me fully to where I would be lost. I'd be stuck in my shell of a body with something else controlling it. And my roommate wakes me up and he's like, dude, what's going on? And I'm like, oh my God, thank you. I was having the craziest dream. And he's like, you were screaming, help me, help me. And I was like, oh yeah, I was just dreaming that I was getting like attacked or something. And he was like, well, the weird part about it was you were saying it in Italian. I wasn't screaming, help me, help me. I was screaming, aiutami, aiutami, aiutami. And, they say, well, you start dreaming in another language and you pretty much got it. I was crying out for the Lord in another language as we was under attack. But that's what things really kind of shook me up. And it was cool that he was there to witness it. So I'm not like crazy, but clearly my subconscious, if we want to get Freudian about it, has one hell of an imagination, because that shook me up for sure. In any case, in the summer, another group of students showed up. After I got done house sitting, I moved back into the villa, and one night, I was just like the man of the town at that point. I just had my routine, I had my friends, so I was glad to be living back in the city center. And I got back in one night, and the new faculty family, it was just one teacher, and she was engaged, and her husband wasn't staying with her. So she was staying on the opposite side of the hotel by the administration offices in this apartment that was made to fit a family, because whoever would run the hotel, the maitre d', or I don't know how to call it, would live there. And that's how, hotels were ran back in the day. So I know that's got some cryptid stuff going on in there. So mad props to her for not being scared, because I'd be like, nah, I'm going to sleep on the dorm side with the students. In any case, I come back home one night. It was probably like 1 a.m. and people are just freaking out. And I'm like, what is going on? And they're like, okay. There was like 4 of them and her. And she was just quiet because she just really didn't know what to do. She was holding all her keys. But they explained to me that the alarm system went off. And the alarm that was going off in her apartment would only be the alarm for the back gate, where like guests and deliveries would enter into the administration offices. But it was the gate to the courtyard, the garden from the street. And this metal brass gate with a lock that you need a key, a secured lock, was being alerted that it had been open. And so I guess that she rounded up the students that were there, and they went to the basement because they wanted to check to see if anyone had broken in or something like that, or someone was there that we didn't know. And they all split up in the basement where our classrooms are, Janet Leake's classroom. And by the way, I would try to Skype down there, at night or something, to get some privacy, and I could never do it. After a homegirls thing on Skype in the foyer, and there was just, I did not like, it was that classroom, because I would study. They actually had opened up a newly renovated computer lab next to that, further away from the main building. And that was my little sanctuary, because it was all decked out and no one utilized it. But I never got a bad vibes in there, but the main classroom I did. And so they were all in different classrooms, and they all said they didn't describe exactly what, but something shook them up enough on their own in each room to where they all ran out the rooms at the same time and met each other in the hallway. And then that freaked them out. And yeah, that's when I got home, I guess. So the next day, the woman, the director of the program, whose house I'd house sat, she reviewed the security footage. And what it showed was the gate on its own opening. And that's why the alarm went off. The alarm wasn't wrong. The gate was open. But how it opened was unexplainable. That woman vehemently denies that place is haunted. I don't blame her. She works there every day, and she's badass. I mean, so don't get me wrong. When I got back to Malibu, I would live in an apartment that I used to party in a lot. And It was close to campus, and it was less than half a mile from the beach. So, at least from the coastline. Well, no, it was less than half a mile from beach access. Yeah, and weird things would happen in there, and it was a big stoner den. And I remember sitting there next to my good friend and roommate at the time, and his bong just exploded, just out of nowhere. It was sitting on carpet, it was on the ground, glass bong, and it just exploded. It did not make any sense whatsoever. There's not like there would be like built up pressure or anything like that because it's a bong. There's open ends on both sides. It wasn't hot. Sometimes we would hear upstairs, it sounded like people were walking around. But if you have neighbors, you live in a condominium complex, you think you're hearing it through the walls. But sometimes, like, you kind of knew, like, no, that would have been my floor creaking, or it would sound like a door closed, or the front door would open and close by itself all the time. And we would just blame it on the wind, because we're right by the ocean, we're right by the beach, and the pressure system, whatever. Okay. Well, I had to dog sit one night. And I'm dog sitting this little like Frenchie, I think, or it looks like a miniature version of that, Huckleberry Gumbo. And this dog is so adorable. Nothing in the world is going to get between me and it. Let me tell you that. But that whole evening, even though I lived there and had been living there off and on for a few years by then, I felt for the first time really uneasy in my own home. And I was home alone too. And this is a place that was often never less, you would never be alone in because it was like party central. And we were close to campus. So friends would usually always be coming through, passing and going. I just felt uneasy the whole time. And we had 2 television screens because we'd have like Super Bowl parties or watch parties and stuff. So we'd have 2 different games going on or something on, it's a 4 corners of the big living room. And in the far corner, directly opposite of me, like directly adjacent, is a didgeridoo, which is a Aboriginal instrument from Australia. It's a long wooden, almost flute, but it's huge. And this thing was taller than me on its stand, and its stand was made out of the same wood. We'd never touched it. It was more decor than it was, a toy. It was beautiful, and it clearly had a spiritual instrument. Well, this thing just slams down to the ground, and it went with such velocity, with such speed. It was clearly intentional. Now, let's say there was a mouse or a cord or something that would have knocked it, then the fall would have been slow. But this was clearly something that slammed it. So that was odd enough, but the fact that it was facing me, it was like pointing right at me, that shook me up. And at that point, it was fight or flight, and I decided to fight. So I stood up to my feet, I walked right over to that thing, and I stood it right back up on its stand, and I stood in that corner looking up at the ceiling because that little dog was yapping away and looking up at that corner, and I was like, come here, but it wouldn't get close to me at that point because I was near whatever it was. And I felt like okay after that. Things kind of simmered down, but I was definitely straight shook. So after living there, I wasn't too keen on staying after that night. So I did end up moving out, and I lived in a couple of places throughout the Malibu Hills. One place in particular, up Latigo Canyon, and I found out on this show, The Affair, that there's like this legend that there was a cult up there and they would sacrifice young men. And who knows, I lived up there. But one thing that did happen prior to my arrival that I was not made aware of before I moved into a shared living space was that a young man that had lived there prior to me, he was a heroin addict. And the guy that was renting me the space in his refinished garage/basement, along with his son, and then there was another big room, so there were two more guys that would eventually move in. But prior to all of our arrival, he had rented it out to a young man that was friends with his son, and the guy borrowed his car, went to Skid Row, got some heroin, came back and overdosed in the same bed that they had rented me. So that explained a lot of the bad vibes that were in that place. I was home alone, and in order to get to my front door, you would have to drive up the driveway. There's no way you're walking up to where I'd live at that point. I was in the hills, like in the mountains, and like in order to get to my front door on my side of the house in the garage, you would have to walk on the balcony or the porch because we were right off a decline, descent, like a cliff. So I hear someone walking on the porch, and there's a window along the porch, and it's right behind the television. I'm watching TV, and I see someone move past the television, move past the window on the balcony, and I hear it. But I don't see a person, and I didn't hear a car pull up. So I jump up off the couch, and I go to that door, and I lock it, and I press up against it. No, I have to press up against it because it was starting to open, and I could feel pressure from the other side, and I had to put my shoulder into it, and I'm putting my weight up against it, and I lock it, and the door to the house behind me swings open. No one's there. So I know that place was next to like some type of vortex that's known up there. There'd be a lot of like spiritual practices still going up there to this day. So if you're into paranormal tourism, check out Latigo Canyon. Besides that, Mulholland Drive, the guy at the front door of my friend's mansion, because all these buddies were renting that big house off of Mulholland Highway, and I went downstairs and I was going back up the stairs and I heard 3 knocks on the door. Frosted glass window, I see someone standing out there. I go to open up the door and nobody's there, to my left or to my right. And, that was the second time that happened because it happened in Italy too. So, I've had a fair share of paranormal, supernatural experiences. And it's when these entities or whatever, these occurrences, start compelling me to act physically that I want to make sure I'm prepared spiritually. And if no one's there to witness it, that sucks. But that's why I'm talking about it now, because I know that some of my listeners, a lot of them, have had these experiences. And if you have, please email me, earth@erhunter.live, and let me know, and we can set up an interview. I'd love to hear about any similar experiences. This show's not going to be too long today, but I didn't want to leave you hanging. So it was a little recap of some experiences I had in Malibu, some new experiences I had in Italy, and a continuation of the Rhetorical Sake series, Straight Shook. I really appreciate you tuning in. Please subscribe, review, and rate the show. What I'm going to start doing for those of you that subscribe, review, rate the show, if you review the show and you email me or you review the show, I will select one of the reviewers and I will mail you. I'll contact you via email, and I will buy you either the digital version or I will mail you 2 copies of my books. So 1 copy of each of my books. And I'll put you on the mailing list for my upcoming book. So, that I'm working on now. And that's why this episode ain't too long today.
Go ahead and review the show on iTunes, or if you do it on SoundCloud, either way, I would really appreciate the support. I'm so glad that the listeners are growing in numbers. Keep sharing it with your friends. Keep talking about it. And let's get interactive about this thing. Once again, we're produced by Extra Resources That Help. That is my organization, aka Earth. You can support my movement, my podcast, my writing, my creative endeavors to better the world and to inspire and to motivate and to raise consciousness. You can help me do that at patreon.com/erhunter. Right now, 20% of the donations we raise are going to be donated to where I adopted my little angel, my puppy, my dog. And so check out the video on there. I'm going to be updating that soon. And I'm just so looking forward to life. Let's enjoy this Hunter Moon. Embrace change. Be ready to make some change. And, get your squad game up. Know who's surrounding you. If they're not building you up, if they're tearing you down, it might be time to let them go. And I'm so grateful today that the people around me are building me up, not tearing me down. I don't have to brag too much. I don't have to talk too much about my podcast. I'm just grateful I got something to do that's bigger than me. I'm glad I found that within myself. And it's constantly, you guys are pulling it out of me, and I keep doing it. So I'm going to keep striking, baby, until we strike oil or that living water, whichever one you thirsty for. I love you guys. Thank you so much. Straight Shook episode 4. That's a wrap.